Hello, everyone. Welcome in. There's that moth again. That's just going to keep irritating me. All right. Anyway, today is the first day of attempting to learn how to draw. We'll just see how that goes. For now, I have a bunch of different videos to watch. We'll probably go through most of them today, honestly. If you're watching this on YouTube, I will try to remember to put this playlist in the description. And I did make sure to make it public. And I will most likely be adding to it at some point. But the idea is, in the beginning, probably just like the first few days, watching a lot of YouTube videos on how to learn how to draw, how to improve, stuff like that. I will be doodling up here. Hello? Oh, there we go. I'll be doodling up here so you can see where I am at. I have very little drawing abilities. Get down. Did I accidentally... Hold on. Let me... There we go. It has been a pain to get this to work. It took me a while to figure out how to even get this drawing. Like, I'm using Krita. It was not capturing. It would capture, but like it wasn't capturing. It was here, but every time I like drew on it, it just continued to show a blank page. I was thoroughly confused. Anyway, I'll be doodling. You can see how bad I draw. And, we'll just, if you're bad at drawing, feel free to follow along and maybe improve as well. But we're going to start with Learn to Draw from 0 to 100 Roadmap by Draw Like a Sir. And again, I will post this playlist in the description. If you find this video helpful, don't forget to go like and subscribe. Actually, let me do that right now before I forget. And let's see what he has to say.
Hi there, my name is Marcel and you guys have been mighty excited for this video, huh? A comment that I get a lot is... where do I start to learn how to draw? There are so many different tutorials on YouTube, where do I even begin?
Yeah, that's how I feel.
This video right here. So what I'm going to do today is to give you a whole roadmap on how to learn how to draw and get into art from the very, very start. I don't know if you like manga or if you're more into portraits or landscapes, but it doesn't matter because after explaining the roadmap, I'll be giving you guys an overview on different art styles and I'll tell you what kind of skill you will need for which art style. So that after this video, you'll know which skills you'll need to level and which ones you can leave on the to-do list for later. Also, I do have one special extra skill I didn't know where to put on this roadmap. It's less of a skill and more of a tip or something you should look out for. So yeah, I'm going to leave this at the end of the video. Alright then, ready? Then let's learn how to draw from scratch.
Let's go!
Circle. I need to prepare you guys for this. There are a lot of skills I'm going to show you all. And spoiler, but I think it's the best if you don't skip any of them. They can always come in handy later on. Because otherwise you will end up like the person from my last video and you obviously don't want that. Alright, skill number 1 is as basic as it gets. Let's call this one line work. Before you're getting into art, I think it would be best to not keep any bad habits. Because they die hard, like an Elden Ring boss. TLDR, you should work on your skill to make some clean strokes with your pencil. This makes a world of difference if you actually compare even the simplest of drawings, one done by a person who has practiced a line work and one who hasn't. I mentioned this before, but I think sketching like that comes from insecurity because you're not quite sure where to literally draw the line. Don't get me wrong here, I also use sketched lines when I want to draw lines a bit thicker, but that's just for cosmetics. When sketching the actual base, I really only sketch with clean, distinct lines, and so should you, at least in my opinion. And what I just did, well, in this business, we call it
Damn, literally calling me out on the spot.
Wait a minute.
Because now, we're going to put the skill of line work to the test. I couldn't think of a name for this one, so I just let you guys decide for the name for this one on Insta. That one sounds professional, I like that. Anyways, you guys are welcome to, right now, grab a pencil and check if you already acquired the simple shape design skill. I always preach that you should be able to draw the most basic shapes so that you're able to draw a decent human later on by using all of these shapes in the process. But are you able to draw the most simple shapes there are? For real, could you draw some clean triangles, circles and squares? Because in order to do this, you would obviously need the previous line work skill in order to make these shapes look so clean. Otherwise, you would see a pretty big difference right away. And in case this doesn't work out for you yet, well, quantity is the word of the hour here. Now, the natural evolution here would be to evolve to the next dimension. If you were to Google something like shape sketching practice, you will notice that most results on Google Images are not simple 2D sketches, but rather they are almost all 3-dimensional shapes. Again, if you're a long-term viewer of this channel, you all know some examples I showed you before. Sketching out 3-dimensional shapes as guidelines is leagues more realistic than just using some plain old circles and squares. Also, don't think I only talk about comics or manga here, this also goes for portraits and anything else you can sketch out. If something looks more 3-dimensional, it almost always looks more believable as well. And maybe, if you paid attention, you saw that this skill isn't called 3D drawing, but more 3D vision. It's not only about simply drawing a cube instead of a rectangle, it's also about seeing shapes or objects and understanding how or of what shapes they are made of. I wouldn't call this skill perspective though. This is more like a baby version of perspective. Just understanding the 3-dimensionality of shapes and objects and knowing how to draw them. Before actually tackling perspective, I have another skill I would like to introduce you to. Now, I don't think this is going where you think it does, but yeah, basically learning how to draw humans is obviously important. I actually don't suggest you read into things like detailed anatomy right away, because that's also something that people flood my Instagram DMs with. Why does my drawing of a human body look like a shriveled up blow-up doll? Believe me, that's a kind of message I basically get at least once per day. People see detailed artworks and are like, yeah, I need to draw like that as well. So they desperately try to add all of these different details and muscle groups without even knowing how to draw the most basic human proportions. That's why your characters are getting this dehydrated corpse strip. You're already trying to learn skills from way up in the skill tree, all the way from above. Detailed anatomy is something you shouldn't even be touching with a 10-foot pole right now. What you need to learn are proportions, basically meaning how a body is constructed and what the size of the individual parts are. And that's precisely why I call this skill simple anatomy, but you might as well just call this one proportions. Also, a little tip I have for you all: if you can stop your ADHD brain from drawing details already, you can at least use some space for that. Sketching your drawings a bit bigger really gives you some room to breathe and can make some huge difference. I don't recommend it, but if you totally have to, that's how I would go about it. In case you never dabbled in this topic of perspective before, this is the point where you could at least get your feet wet. Just like before, these are still the very simple basic skills, because at this point we are still at the very beginning of your art journey.
Hey Kitty, how's it going?
I think it's best to still stick to the basics. While drawing and using perspective, you need to know about vanishing points. You could have 3 in total in every artwork. While editing this video, I got to answer a couple of messages about this topic, so I thought I could at least just quickly note this here. Of course, there are artworks with 4 or 5 or 6.
Yeah, I haven't been streaming because my air conditioning broke. It broke last Friday, so like a week ago almost. And it was just too hot to do anything. Like I was not going to be going live. It was just too awful. Thank you for the hydrate. But yeah, tried fixing it Saturday. I did fix it. The initial problem, it was there was a wire problem. And then after it was fixed, went to go flip everything back on. And the outside unit, the fan inside, it took like 30 seconds to build up to max speed. And I'm like, well, that's not good. I definitely have to look into that. But I'm super tired because I worked overnight and it was almost noon. And I'm like, I need to sleep. It's working for now, so I'll look at it after I get up or tomorrow, on Sunday, whatever. Went to sleep, woke up after a little while, realized, hey, I don't hear the fan outside spinning, but I hear the air conditioner running. So, went outside, and the outside fan's not spinning. And I'm like, oh, that's really bad. That fan has to spin to cool down the system, and if not, it can overheat and break. Stop. Ugh. So I had to order a new fan motor and install that, which was not easy. And I only got my air fixed yesterday. So today's like the first day where I was able to, or last night was the first night I slept with like actual air conditioning. And mind you, I live in Florida, so it's hot, very hot. Ugh. It was like 87 degrees when I finally turned my AC back on. That's what my thermostat said. Go away! God, you guys are being so annoying. Anyway.
6 or 7 vanishing points. Like 4 vanishing points, kind of cool, but I honestly doubt that most of you will ever draw something like this. Anyway, you could totally read into this if you absolutely want to, though. Drawing an artwork with 1 vanishing point's kinda easy, while having one with 3 can be kinda challenging. So for now, I think it's enough to learn how to use at least 1 vanishing point. Otherwise, this could be a bit too much input for starters. If you learn how to use this 1 point perspective, you'll also be able to draw some more advanced 3D scenarios. So if you break it down, it really is exactly what we've learned up until now. A couple of 3D shapes and boxes with clean line work that point towards 1 perspective, 1 vanishing point. So yeah, of course this is still very basic, but at least it doesn't look incredibly amateurish if you go about it the right way. At least this artwork right here was good enough for me to print it into the 2nd volume of my manga series, so yeah, simple doesn't have to mean bad. And if you care about my manga series, you can take a look at it on my website. But enough of that, we are almost at the point where we're going into advanced territory. So let's take a look at the next skill you could practice in case you've come this far. And that would be... I think dynamics are what differentiates an okay-ish artwork from a really good one. I mean, look at this. It's the same character, the same knowledge, and the same skills here. The only thing that's different here is the dynamics the character is laid out with. My subscribers are probably already familiar with this dynamic line. And I think at this point, right before we're going into advanced territory, this is the perfect timing
building a town for working from one thing to another. At this point, you're not an absolute beginner when it comes to drawing, so it's not too early, but you're also not too advanced. Wait, what? You can be too advanced? Yeah, just wait, I'll show you what I mean by that. It's the same as with the anatomy example from the beginning. You remember that one, right?
Please don't tell me TikTok already destroyed your attention span that much.
Hey, you're supposed to watch this video right now. I've worked on these animations for weeks, god damn.
Yeah, for those who remember, it's the same exact example from the beginning. If you're too absorbed into drawing the details, you neglect the basics. It's as simple as that. And dynamics are something you also apply at the very start. Dynamics are something you plan out before you draw in all of those details. And since we're still in the beginner territory, this is basically the best timing to practice drawing those simple mannequins you've learned to draw before with some dynamic poses. And now that we've finished the simpler beginner topics, some of you might wonder what kind of time frame would be realistic for this kind of knowledge up until now. Could you learn all of this within a day? Or maybe like a week?
A day?
The answer to that is there is no answer. Never has been. With my tutorials on drawing perspective, anatomy and dynamics and all of these different kinds of stuff, you could easily learn all of this in round about one day. But that doesn't mean that you've actually acquired all of those skills. It's just like watching a quick tutorial on differential equations and then actually solving them yourself. Just watching tutorials won't be enough. It takes weeks or maybe months of actual practice until you can actually do all of this beginner stuff we've covered by yourself. Take your time, learn the basics. Pressure is absolute poison to your creativity, so don't rush things. After all, you don't want to be that guy. So, are you all ready? Then let's get more advanced. The first advanced skill I would suggest to learn is advanced perspective. Like I said, you can learn how to draw perspective with 2 and 3 vanishing points as well, and this can get pretty challenging depending on your subject. Obviously, people always associate vanishing points with landscapes, but that's not always the case. You could also use vanishing points to check if the perspective of your object matches up. Why would I just draw some cubes anymore? Isn't this advanced territory? Well, yeah, this is advanced territory, but you still need these cubes you've learned to draw at the beginning as guides to now actually draw more advanced stuff. So by using 3-point perspective, you get to draw some pretty crazy perspectives. That's why I put this skill at the very start of the advanced territory, because it all depends on how you use it. Vanishing points are a very helpful tool for pro art, but it's also something you could still use earlier on for more basic art.
A neat looking skull.
The next advanced lesson would be shape design. You've learned to draw some easier 3D shapes, but if you would manage to draw some really hard shapes and objects, you can basically draw, well, anything. From out of this world Lovecraftian objects to a coffee mug. If you truly master the skill, you can just combine it with
the dreaded coffee
3D
mug
vision skill from earlier, and you can literally draw anything just by looking at it. This obviously takes a ton of practice, but you have the tools right at your hand. You have the skill of 3-point perspective to check the perspective of an object, 3D vision to understand how it's made up, being able to draw any shape in order to copy it, and also the very first skill you've learned, some nice line work. And that's why this skill is a bit earlier into advanced territory as well. Not because it's easy by any means, but because it's so useful. Doesn't matter if you're a portrait artist and your portrait model's wearing some weird necklaces that you need to copy, or if you want to draw a statue from a certain building. With this skill, in combination with all of the previous skills, you can basically draw everything. I didn't make a video about practicing shapes yet, but I think the best course of action here would be to just Google some advanced shapes and try to practice that way. Now, here's the elephant in the room, anatomy. Yeah, alright, if you're someone who's only drawing headshots or humans, you could obviously learn this a bit earlier. A lot of things on this roadmap depend on preference, but I just think it's a lot better to accumulate all of the skills I already mentioned. I think I've listed off enough reasons already. So yeah, this part here completely depends on if you actually care about drawing human faces at all. I guess landscape artists really couldn't care less about this topic, but otherwise, this is the point where I would say the floodgates are open, and you should learn anything about the human face there is. There are a lot of different methods for learning how to draw human faces and heads, like the Steve Houston method, the Loomis method, the Riley method, and so on. I personally think they are a good way to get started into this topic and learn how to draw a human face. But with time, you'll probably develop your own method anyway, just like I did. Don't worry, you'll arrive at this point once you know the ins and outs of the human face. Now once you're able to draw shapes and faces and all of that, you could finally advance into giving your art a bit more depth. Of course, you could also read into this earlier, but I think everything else I mentioned so far is far more important than shading. After all, what good is shading if you're not even able to draw a human base correctly? Like I said, this is where you could get your feet wet, so you could learn it the most simple way, with simplified
really
planes that tell you where to shade darker and where to shade lighter. That's at least the approach that I went with when I made a tutorial about this topic. I think this is a nice way for beginners to get into this topic and get a grasp on how shading actually works. There's one last skill before we split up our roadmap, and that's, of course, anatomy as a whole. Since I don't want to treat you guys all the same, this skill here could literally mean anything. If you're an artist who focuses on animals, then study the ever-loving heck out of any animal that you're drawing. Same goes for fantasy creatures and anything else. If you've come this far with your art, I think you're good enough to pick for yourself what kind of anatomy you would want to learn. Be it animals, fantasy creatures, men, women, or whatever. But at least with human anatomy, I mean the whole 9 yards. You could learn how to draw anatomically correct hands, how the muscles of a human body interact with one another, and so on. This skill alone basically takes a lifetime to complete. You'll never really be finished learning about this stuff. The most important thing though is that you're tackling this after learning about the simpler version with all of the proportions. Because otherwise, yeah. And now here's where things get interesting. I honestly don't think it matters which one of these skills you'll learn first. It honestly comes down to preference. Just be prepared, just like with anatomy, these are also some advanced skill sets, so they take ages to actually master. I'd even dare to say some of them are topics that take a lifetime to master because you never really stop learning about them. You could really level up your shading to get to the advanced shading skill, for example. Instead of just plain black and white, you'll also learn how to shade with multiple light sources and how light interacts with your subject in case you acquire the skill. This also kinda requires you to learn a bit of color theory, so you can bet this can take ages to fully master. Same goes for rendering. This is basically the art of adding details to your drawing. Some famous examples are cross-hatching or smooth blending. There are many different ways or styles of rendering your art, and which one you should pick depends on a lot of factors. Like, for example, what medium you're using. Are you working in color or with black and white? Truly one of the most individual skills you could have. And last but not least, composition. This topic is incredibly underrated, yet so vast. By learning and also mastering this composition skill, you never really have problems with picking backgrounds anymore, because abiding by these rules means you already know which kind of background fits which subject or motive. I already wrote articles about this and how I'm using composition in my art, and I really want to make a video about this sometime. But like I said, these topics are so vast, a composition video would be pretty much as long as this video right here, if not longer. But I will upload it eventually. Just subscribe to the channel and you'll get notified when I upload a video about composition. Oh yeah, right, I did mention this hidden skill at the beginning, didn't I? This skill isn't really part of the roadmap per se, so let's tackle that one last. Because I also promised you guys to give you an overview of what skills you would need to learn with the style that you're pursuing. So let me just give you an overview of what the most common styles are and what skills you would need for them. The most important part is that it doesn't matter which style you're pursuing, you will need the basic skill set I mentioned. Until that point, I would really urge you guys to master all of these skills because they can come in handy in every style. Now let's start with the one that you're all probably familiar with, portraits. I think portraits are kind of self-explanatory, but I'll say it anyway. Facial anatomy and shading should be absolutely mastered skills here. Also, since you need to deliver the most aesthetically pleasing outcome with portraits, you should be able to render it the best you possibly can. And something else, composition. It's not absolutely mandatory, but knowing where to place the face on your page and how big it should be, which corners should stay blank, and where to push the weight of your artwork and so on should elevate your portrait to another level. Because the devils in the detail after all. With landscapes, you obviously won't need any detailed or advanced anatomy. I think the basics should be enough to add a couple of humans to your artwork or landscape. Something you should absolutely max out though is composition. Also, perspective is absolutely non-negotiable here. I know there are artists who just paint some loose shapes without any perspective at all, but since this video is more about drawing than painting, I'll just ignore this point. Shading, and by that extension also color theory if you're painting, is a must-have.
Is there a big difference between painting and
definitely
drawing?
max that out. And other than that, I think rendering could also...
I always assumed, like, if you're going to paint something, you sketch on the canvas beforehand and then paint over it. Which would mean, like, you draw, because sketching is drawing, and then you paint over it. Is that not how people paint? Do people just start putting, like, the first thing they do with a canvas is just start slapping paint on it? I always figured
be
you'd
pretty important.
sketch beforehand.
Shape design also couldn't hurt, but this only goes for when you have to draw some tricky buildings or statues. I know most of you are into comic, webcomic or manga, so I want to prepare you guys that's not going to be an easy pill to swallow, but you need to basically be a jack of all trades here. There's no skill you won't need, be it advanced shape design in order to draw objects like swords, anatomy for action poses, composition for arranging your panels, perspective so that your panels don't all look the same, and so on. I don't think you have to be a master of all of them, but you at least have to be good at all of them. But after all, since there are so many different art styles, it's kinda up to you which one of these skills you'll actually master. Depending on which skills you level, your manga or comics gonna look completely different. But yeah, I'd say level as much as you possibly can here. By the way, I've made videos about almost all of these topics I mentioned so far, from shading to rendering and dynamics and many more. So maybe you would want to take a look at those videos I've made. But there's still one thing left, right? Yeah, it's a skill I couldn't really find a place for. And that's because it's kind of the most important one, yet it's nothing you can practice per se. It's something that evolves over time. It's the observation skill. It's the skill to analyze an artwork and to understand what makes it so good.
Awful
Is it
looking
the way
dagger.
the artwork's composed? Is it the way it's shaded or the way the anatomy is handled? Maybe the pose that's implemented has a unique dynamic. So now, this analytic skill allows you to learn from other artworks. This is also how you'll be able to develop your very own art style, by learning from other artworks and implementing what makes them so good into your artworks. This autodidactic skill is what makes you evolve indefinitely. Without this skill, without being autodidactic, you will always have to depend on books, tutorials and classes. But if you truly acquire this skill, you will be able to learn from any artwork you're seeing. And learning just by looking at something helps you to level up your skills even without actively trying. So you'll keep evolving more and more. And this is the ultimate skill that every artist should be aware of. Because there's always something in an artwork that you could learn from. So, just like the old master said, ancora imparo.
So you want to learn to draw, but where do you start? What are the steps to go from zero to hero? And to answer this question, we're going to go on an art journey, looking at the skills that you should focus on as a beginner while making our way in a carefully structured fashion towards our goal of eventually being able to draw anything you can imagine. The skill tree to go from level 0 to 100 as an artist. So if you've been curious about learning art from scratch, or you've just been stuck along the way and you're not sure how to move forward, tag along. This episode of YouTube Art School should help. Here it begins. The starting point. Just like in a video game with a new character, you're about to learn your first art skill, the first of many. And by the way, as we progress through the video, as you level up, we'll unlock different skills that will then become the foundation to unlock more advanced skills. And stick around, because later in the video, we'll even look at different art builds or sets of skills that might be more important for you, and maybe some skills that you could skip depending on your artist build of choice, either as a concept artist, illustrator, or comic artist. Also worth mentioning, I'll cover which skills you should learn, but I won't have time to explain how to learn them and what to practice in this short YouTube video, since that would literally take hours.
I cannot
but
draw
to
a
help
handle
with
of a
that,
sword.
I'll be referring you guys to a lot of other videos on the channel, which hopefully will be enough for many of you. But if you're looking for the ultimate power leveling cheat, the ultimate pay to win option when it comes to art education, check out my full art program that's currently on sale with the link in the video description. The holiday sale is almost over, but I'll be extending it for the new year to celebrate reaching 20,000 students, just at a slightly reduced discount to be fair to all of those who got it early.
And
It's
how,
not too late
how does
yet.
he draw
Don't
like just
miss
like
out. And now then, with
2
your
lines
smudge
and
guard
that's it?
equipped, your pen in hand, let's unlock
It's
the
like,
first skills
whoop,
of your artist skill tree,
whoop,
the
and that's it.
foundation upon which everything else will be built.
Meanwhile, I'm like
Everything you'll ever draw will always be based on this. It's the skill that will allow you to
Million
draw
little
shapes into
lines.
dimensions like circles, squares, and so on, but also, more importantly, simple 3D volumes like boxes, spheres, and cylinders. Just like Lego blocks, we can arrange shapes and
Those are nice
volumes
looking
that
horns.
most people can draw with very little practice and construct more complex structures. Thinking like an artist means thinking about form in everything you see and draw. And talking about seeing, the second fundamental skill is observation.
oh yeah, this is autoplay. I should turn that off. Wait, can I turn off autoplay? I don't know if I can turn off autoplay. We're on a new video. I didn't really even realize. It should have been clear when it was a whole different person. But we're on Learn to Draw level 0 to 100. It's almost the same title as the last one we watched. But this is by Mark Brunet. Brunet? Give it a like and a subscribe.
Regular people see, artists observe. There's a big difference in the amount of information one can absorb versus the other. The process of simply seeing is passive, looking at things and having
Those
no
faces
further
are so
thoughts
good.
about it. Observing, on the other hand, is an active process, paying attention, trying to understand why things look a certain way, and constantly being curious about the world around you. The sooner you make it a habit to observe instead of simply seeing, the faster you'll be able to climb up this skill tree. I have specific classes for both of these skills too, so check the video description later to find all the links to relevant classes. I actually have classes for the majority of the skills that we'll cover today. Very epic. And with your foundation established, we can now set our sight onto the next set of skills, starting with perspective basics. What are those
Perspective.
exactly? Well, I like to think of things like the horizon, vanishing points, convergent lines, and one-point perspective as being relatively simple to get into, and that should help you make sense of a lot of things art-related moving forward. Right next to it, shading. Form alone might be enough to fool the eye of the viewer into thinking that a 2D drawing looks 3D-ish. But shading is really going to take that to the next level by enhancing the illusion of 3D and adding texture to
Oh
the
my god,
artwork.
this cube
By
is actually
varying
like
the levels of
decent.
brightness and darkness within the art, or what we call the values, you'll be able to create the illusion of depth and volume for an otherwise flat-looking line drawing. You'll be able to do this by using various methods like cross-hatching, stippling, or smooth blending.
Oh my god, I drew a cube on what was it? Over on this. So let me see. We're at 411. On this page, you can see this cube. I'm like, oh, I can draw that. And I did. Obviously, it's not as good, but that's like the first cube I'm kind of happy with. Anyway, we're at 4. Where's
stippling, or smooth blending. And then for the last skill at that level, we have gesture drawing. As the first real skill about the human figure, this might seem hard, but the goal here is not really to draw a perfect figure. Rather, it'll be to focus on quick sketches targeting good proportions and poses. From 30-second photo studies to about 5-minute max, the time constraint will force you to ignore details in your reference studies and focus instead on the bigger shapes, the big details. It should also start to spark a bunch of questions about anatomy and prime you for the more advanced skills to follow. So let's take a look at those, and I'll go much faster for the rest as things will only get more and more self-explanatory as you gain experience and level up. It's really the structure
I
here
don't like
that's
this.
most important. So over here, we have clothing folds. Whether you prefer characters or environments, folds are often something you'll need to draw, and learning how they work will go a long way. For environments,
Oh, like
that
how
could be
fabric
like a
works?
curtain, a tent. I say clothing folds, but
Like
it's really
layering
learning
stuff
to draw
over each other?
fabrics in general. Then there's head construction, which I have on its own here. Just like in my art program, I like to dedicate a skill to it specifically because the head of your characters will often be the center of focus, what we notice and look at first, which makes it slightly more important than the rest of the body. Still, body construction is another important skill. We're not talking about anatomy yet. This would be more about learning to draw the human mannequin, a structure of simple volumes, that by themselves are relatively easy to draw, but require some knowledge of proportions to look humanoid.
So difficult.
And then at this level, I also added color theory basics, now that we have a foundation in shading and values. The basics would be things like learning about the chromatic circle, what even makes up a color, aka the hue, the saturation, and the value, and maybe throwing in a few basic color harmonies to the mix. For the next level, looking at advanced color theory now, I'd recommend learning about color psychology, the importance of color temperature, like warm and cool colors, and how we perceive those, getting familiar with all the best known color harmonies, color relativity, and the power of the color gray. Next to that, we have the follow-up to perspective basics, which we already covered, advanced perspective. Some key notions to get familiar with here would be things like 2 and 3 point perspective, possibly even looking into 4 and 5 point perspective, how to draw a perfect box in perspective, how to draw circles in perspective, learning about atmospheric perspective too, maybe. At that level, we also have how to draw hands and feet, which I've considered a skill of its own.
Hands and
Just
feet.
like when drawing heads, I think it helps to focus on those in isolation since they are such complex body parts to draw. And then there's figure drawing too.
I kind of want to see. I want to see if I can replicate that. This one over here. Like when they draw it in like simple shapes, it makes a lot more sense. Let me see. This drawing tablet's not super great. It is so small. It's like my hand can almost cover the entire thing. If I ever want to, I think if I ever get more serious about drawing, I need to save up for a proper drawing tablet that has like a screen on it and it's like a decent size. Let me see. I just want to try and get the basic shapes of this. So this comes down a little bit. And then we have the thumb that comes up. It's not terrible. It more like it comes up here and then goes in a bit. And then comes down like that. It's a little better. I have right here, the gap's a lot bigger than what he has. So more so comes up like this. And then it comes down. The little bump. Yeah, this does not look very great. Going to remove this so it's not so confusing to look at. It does not look good. All right, we'll just let the
since they are such
professional
complex body
keep going.
parts to draw. And then there's figure drawing too. Different than gesture drawing in the sense that the focus is no longer on proportions, poses, and quick sketches, but rather on longer studies from reference, like 10 minutes and up. Well, you'll want to include shading and pay close attention to the anatomy details that you're able to observe. With all of that, you should be ready to move on to the next stage. We're getting up there. So directly related to figure drawing, here we have anatomy basics. To finally make sense of the human body now that you've had a lot of time to observe it. The basics only include the main bone structures of the body and the main groups of surface muscles. At this level, we'll also be dabbling in design for the first time. Character design first here, which is all about combining various references to create new ideas, like breaking up the Lego sets you just bought and using the pieces to construct something new without a manual to guide you through each step, using your creativity.
Oh, it's so
drawing
bad.
animals. You'll notice this shares a lot with the anatomy basics, since animals share like 90% to 95% of their anatomy with us humans, when you look only at the bones and the muscles. Much like figure drawing, this will include drawing from reference, but also learning about anatomy to understand the small differences between the animal families. And then you'll get to use a lot of that to go into creature design. Once again, just like with characters, you'll borrow from nature and combine different animals to create new ones, exaggerate certain features, and play with colors to create imaginary beasts, insects, giant lizards like dragons, and so on. For the last skill on that level, I included storytelling, because it goes hand in hand with design. Storytelling in art is all about giving your creations depth, taking a simple generic drawing and adding details that suggest a backstory. Like a simple scar on a character's face could suggest a previous encounter that didn't go too well. It's a skill that will allow you to draw things people will find an emotional connection to, something they'll remember. And finally, at max level, these are the skills I think are worth learning to really complement your knowledge so far. Learning to draw facial expressions here will unlock many possibilities when drawing characters that you should be able to utilize now with a knowledge of storytelling. Advanced anatomy will be a continuation of the anatomy basics. We'll dive into perhaps the individual muscles of the body, learn to draw different body parts and different angles with foreshortening and accurate muscle placement. Basically, the aim would be to avoid making anatomy mistakes that could potentially ruin your drawings. Here we also have the composition skill, helping you understand how to display the various elements in your artwork in a way that reads well, like good formatting in a book. You should learn about the composition ratios, like the golden rule, the rule of thirds, what kind of frame works best for the things that you want to illustrate maybe, what is and how to use the focal point, and all of that will serve you well when drawing just about anything. But definitely for environment design, which is the next skill. Here you'll use everything you've learned so far to create environments that have depth, environments that pull you in and that others might want to visit maybe. And then the last skill, prop design, will help you fill up your environments full of interesting objects, help you dress up your characters with interesting gadgets, and while often it isn't something most think about, if you spend the time on designing good props,
really cool.
It has the potential to add a lot of storytelling to your art and really draw in the viewer. And there you have it. With all those skills, you really should be able to draw nearly everything your mind can imagine. You should be a complete artist. It's not gonna happen overnight, of course. It'll take years, probably. But the
I'm
power
tired of
to draw
drawing hands.
anything is the best in the world, in my opinion. No wonder I spent my life dedicated to it. And before we wrap things up, I did promise to go over 3 different artist builds: concept artist, illustrator, and comic artist. Let's do that now. Starting with the concept artist build. I've highlighted the skills that are going to be essential for the concept artist, someone whose focus will be on design primarily. Character, environment, creature, prop design. This is someone who won't need to create super polished works of art, but rather someone whose goal will be to sell ideas through drawings. The skills I've left grayed out won't serve you as well if concept art is all that you're interested in. Next, the illustrator's build. An illustrator's main purpose is usually not to sell an idea, but sell a product or an emotion instead. Their art might tell a whole story. There's going to be an emphasis on mood, ambience, drama, lighting, and the quality of the render. So these are the skills that will serve them best. And then the comic artist build. Here, the focus will be on drawing not the quality of the render. Usually, comics will mostly feature line drawings and the same characters in different poses, displaying different emotions. Of course, storytelling will be huge here, so these are the skills that will be most beneficial if that's what you're interested in. And well, that's gonna be it for this week's class. That was a lot of work, but hopefully you found it useful and it was worth it. Let me know in the comments, share the video if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next year.
3 ways to draw the body like a pro. 5 worst art tips you've used before.
If I could go back in time a couple of years, there's a few things I'd like to
All right. So these next few ones aren't more, they're not like, oh, here's how to, like, things you need to learn. Not necessarily. The next few videos are more about things or habits these artists wish they knew earlier on. This one is Art Things I Wish I Knew Earlier by Goblish. Do a like and a subscribe.
tell younger artists to me things that would have saved me probably years and helped me improve in art a lot earlier and a lot quicker. So let's talk about that. Step 1, stop being a sorry little baby. So context, a couple years ago I was
What does
facing
that
a
mean?
particular problem in my art, and this problem was dissatisfaction, or like disappointment with the things I was drawing. You know, just common artist problems, right? Because what would happen very often was situations where I'd have this really cool idea for a drawing and I'd go and try to make it, and then halfway through realize that my skill was not quite at the level where it could manifest the ideas that I was imagining, which
I
is
feel
kind
that.
of an L situation. And so because
You start drawing. Please get down. There's no room for you to be on my desk. I had to grab one of my old monitors that has like shadowing on it, because I need. So this screen where I'm drawing needs to have a monitor all by itself. The YouTube video needs to have a monitor all by itself, and then it's like, well, I need a third screen to see chat. So, So I'm using one of my old monitors. This is one of the things where I'm glad I didn't just throw it away. This is the main monitor I used to use, but on the top of the screen, it's like the colors faded out. Like the pixels aren't pressed up against the screen like they're supposed to be. It's a lot brighter. But it's good enough for reading chat and having OBS and stuff over here. But in doing so, I have 3 monitors on this desk, which is it was already kind of crowded. And my cat wants to jump up here and lay down. And it's like, my guy, there's no room for you up here. I don't know. I was going to say, I completely understand that. I can't tell you how many times I will start to draw something and like halfway through, I'm like, wow, it looks awful. I'm just going to give up and start again, or I'm going to draw something else.
because of this, I
completely
think to
relate.
myself strange thoughts such as, man, drawing is hard. Man, I hate drawing. Da, 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 da. However, this is a prime example of a psychological concept that I like to call being a sorry little baby. So what's the counter to this that I wish I knew earlier? Well, you see, at some point I kind of came up with an idea. You could call it a theory, a thought experiment, if you will, that kind of just clapped me out of this state of being dissatisfied with my drawings. And it goes something like this. I would hypothesize that most artists would feel 100 times better if we all just walked around with a number in our head displaying how many hours we've studied art for, because then things would just make a lot more sense. Let me explain it to you, right? So coincidentally, actually, not too long ago, the YouTuber Sam Does Arts put out
Why do
a
my
video where
circles
he
suck?
was reviewing his childhood art. And my initial reaction to all of that, as well as a lot of people from the comments, was, man, I wasn't that good when I was 8. Man, I wasn't that good when I was 12. Oh my god, he's so talented. However, deeper into the video, he kind of just explains exactly what's going on.
If you guys are seeing these pieces and you're like, man, I wasn't doing this at 12, and you're starting to feel disappointed or discouraged, stop that nonsense. It's not about your actual age. It's about how many years you've been practicing, how many years you've been learning. And for me, I started learning art in China from before I was even in elementary school. In Chinese art classes, you get there and it's like a military boot camp, okay? They sit you down and they slap you over the head with art fundamentals. They just destroy you. So if you're someone who's like 20 right now and you're like, I can't even do that, just ask yourself, how many years have you been seriously studying art? If it's not that many, then you can't compare your work with a 12-year-old who's been studying for like 7 years.
And listen, bro, 7 years of training in anything and you're just gonna be built different. But anyway, back to younger me. So after a while just not liking the stuff I was drawing and being very like dissatisfied with that, I ended up coming to the realization that the number on my head would just not be very high, because although I'd always drawn since I was a kid, I was always kind of just flimsying around with my drawing. I never actually studied drawing. Therefore, my skill level was, and always will be, just an indication of how much work I've actually put into this thing. Thus, the number on the head theorem. Therefore, stop being a sorry little baby. You deserve to be at the level that you're at. Alright, step 2. Treat art like a monster. Now, corny as this might sound, for the longest time, art felt like some gargantuan monster, because I'd look at artists online and think to myself, bro, how the hell am I ever gonna get that good? It just made no sense to me. Like, what do I do? How do I even start? Like, it was just so beyond me. I just did not understand how people were able to get that good at drawing. It just didn't make sense to me. So it's like, here's art, this seemingly massive monster, and I just felt like I was there with my little dagger, like, oh my god, how am I gonna beat this thing? Well, to answer that question, let's have a look at fiction. So if you've ever read or watched any piece of fiction where the main cast is faced against some sort of seemingly omnipotent adversary, how do they typically realistically win? Well, it's never by trying to go blow for blow, like going all in head on to try and beat this monster. No, it's typically they sit down, they analyze the situation, they plan out a strategy, and they follow through with it. And in my eyes, that's the best way to approach the monster of drawing. Now, planning being important is not some sort of revolutionary concept on its.
Is that his microphone I'm hearing? Also, this drawing I'm doing is fucking awful. So bad.
But the reason I'm pointing this out is because for the longest time, I knew I wanted to get better, like, duh, every artist does. So I had this kind of...
What do we... I hear, like, stuff rubbing up against the mic, but if you look, there's nothing touching it.
Vague idea of the destination, but I never had a route to getting to that destination, so I just ended up wandering aimlessly, just walking around. I had no idea what I was doing, and that's why I used to be so bewildered when I saw artists who were so good, who were seemingly already at that destination. That makes sense? So nowadays I really value having a structured art study plan, because even though it's gonna take a long time to just master the fundamentals, for example, it doesn't matter. Like, the period of time it takes doesn't matter. The difficulty that it's gonna be doesn't really matter, because first of all, I'll be drawing for the rest of my life anyway, and second of all, because I've got an idea of what that route to point B is gonna look like, art doesn't feel like some unbeatable monster like it did a couple years ago, because I've already got the strategy laid out as to how I'm gonna beat it, so to speak. I don't know, man, the confidence you get from having a solid plan in place is pretty sick, and I just know that if I'd mapped out just a basic art plan a lot earlier, I would have saved myself an ungodly amount of time. Alright, step 3, the thing about drawing every day. So I've seen a lot of discourse on the internet of people talking about drawing every day. Is it good, is it bad, all that stuff. For me personally, I had a certain period that I've talked about in my videos before where maybe about I don't know, like a half a year-ish stretch, I would draw every day for hours a day, and it felt good to like draw a lot. It felt pretty good to be consistent. And you'd think that at this point, since I'd learned from my previous mistakes, so I'd laid out an art study plan and I was being consistent with it, so you'd think that it would be all sunshine and rainbows at this point, which is what I thought as well. However, after a few months of being in this kind of drawing every day thing, I began to kind of notice something. I began to feel like I wasn't improving as much as I could have been or should have been. It just felt like for the amount I was drawing, I just felt like the progress should have been significantly quicker. which isn't necessarily
even
an
doing?
accurate train of thought. So, I sat down and I looked at everything. I was like, okay, well, I've got a study plan laid out and I'm following through with it and I'm being consistent. Like, finally, for the first time in my life, I'm being consistent with my drawing. So, like, what's the issue? It was simple. You see, despite the fact that I was drawing every day and I was being consistent and all that stuff, I failed to pay attention to one of, if not the most important aspect of this entire thing, which is...
Oh my gosh. That is legit giving me anxiety. The constant rubbing sounds of the mic. I don't know why. That just rubs me the wrong way, and I hate it. I don't know how much more I can do with that. It's just like it's like someone's just rubbing their hands, like rubbing something up against the mic every few seconds. I hate it.
The actual practice methods, if you will. So let me tell you exactly what I did. Let me give you a masterclass on how to not practice drawing. So say I was working on something like shading, for example. I would, maybe watch like 1 or 2 videos on the subject, and then I'd go on Pinterest and search up face shading references and then just copy that because I just wanted to learn how to shade the face, And then I'd do that for like 2 hours, stop, and then rinse and repeat over the next couple of days. And that was kind of my whole thing, which is quite simply just not the most optimal way to learn.
You can take your little baby crayon and you can draw in circles with your little baby crayon all day. I can take a spoon and swing it at a tree and call that sucker an axe. More time does not equal getting better.
So it didn't really matter how much I was drawing because my approach was just
That's true.
I don't know, bro. There's so many like different ways and strategies of practicing that it's so easy to get kind of lost in that whole space. Which is why it's just all the more important to spend enough time thinking about it, because, damn, the amount of time I wasted is actually kind of insane. But something I wish I could have done a lot earlier, especially during this kind of period where I was drawing a lot but not practicing well, and something I have began to incorporate into my routine nowadays is online classes. I've been working on my shading by following a really interesting class by Brent Eveston, who's a YouTuber, an author, an incredible art teacher, and I'm really loving his shading class on Skillshare, who are sponsoring this video. So unless you're living under a rock, you know that Skillshare is the largest online learning platform with thousands of classes on pretty much any creative field you can think of, like drawing obviously, as well as painting, animation, editing, photography, graphic design, videography, classes led by top-tier industry professionals. Integrating online classes, video classes by people who know what they're talking about is kind of just where it's at. So like I mentioned, I'm taking Brent Eveston's Shading Beyond the Basics class and learning from someone who's an incredible artist, who's experienced and who knows how to break these concepts down and explain them really well is extremely valuable. Having experienced pros who've walked the path that you want to walk on just kind of lay the groundwork for you, just makes the entire learning process
that mic
much
sounds,
easier.
please, no more mic sounds.
Pretty sick in my opinion. So if you want to learn from the pros and improve your drawing, Skillshare is the place to be. The first 500 people to use the link in my description will get an entire 1-month free trial of Skillshare, which in my opinion is kind of a no-brainer, but that's just my opinion. I don't know, I'm just saying. Alright, so this video so far has been about mistakes I was making in the past, but what are some things that future me wishes he knew earlier? What's some things future me wishes current me knew?
Yes,
and how do I find out what those things are? Well, to do that, we have to look at the patterns from the past and then use that to determine the best actions for the future. So let's just kind of do that. And I'll just kind of start off by saying, you know what would be the stupidest thing of all time? It would be so stupid of me to look back and simply wish I didn't make the mistakes that I did. That's not the point, because there's always going to be mistakes. So the thing, we're not trying to eradicate all possibilities of making mistakes. Because if we take the example that I gave earlier, where I had this kind of half-a-year period where, sure, I was drawing a lot, but I wasn't actually practicing well, it took me months to recognize that there was even a problem, and then it took me another, I don't know, a couple weeks, couple months trying different things, trying to fix it. So when I look back on that period, I don't look back and wish that I never made that mistake, because like we said, that would be stupid. However, I more so look back and think of how much time I would have saved and how much progress I would have saved if I noticed that mistake earlier. In my opinion, that's kind of where it's at. Not necessarily trying to avoid all possibilities of making mistakes, but rather having the skill to recognize mistakes early enough and overcome them early enough, instead of kind of just letting them linger on without you even recognizing that you're making a mistake. That makes sense? So it's about, okay, like, how do we do this? I don't know, bro. I have no idea. I was like, I'm the guy making the video, so I should know, probably.
I don't have volume based on the captions. I'm assuming you don't like ASMR. I have no problem with ASMR. It's just, I don't know. It's just something with this sound. It's just, I don't know. I hate it. Oh, I don't know. I can't explain why. I just don't like
the
it.
most obvious solution, to me at least, now this might be wrong because I've started thinking about this very recently, but the most obvious solution to me would be doing a thing like once, twice a month where you kind of just sit down, look back on your art journey in like recent weeks or recent months, and kind of just evaluate it from a bird's eye view. Pen and paper, just thinking, well, how's the progress looking? How's
it's not like, it just sounds like he's like the mic's hitting something, or it's not a good sound, and it's also erratic. It's not consistent. I'm gonna move on. That video's really, really annoying me.
About a year ago,
I think this will be the last one for today. I don't know what else to sketch because I just I can't draw anything. But this video is by, we're gonna like and subscribe. This is Art Habits I Wish I Knew Earlier by Nero, something like that.
I could barely draw anything decent, but after only a year
What do you mean? A year ago, I could hardly draw anything decent. What do you mean? These look great.
of consistent practice, I managed to improve a lot.
Recent. Yeah, it's better, but a year ago, that was still good a year ago. What the fuck?
4 years now, and for 3 years, I had no clue what I was doing. So in this video, I'm going to share some of the key concepts that I wish I've learned earlier when I was teaching myself how to draw. Now, I'm no professional, but most of these came from actual pros and illustrators that I've watched across the internet. So first lesson is, if you're bad at drawing, don't be. This sounds kinda dumb, but
I'm sorry, but you gotta. What is that? You're bad at drawing? Just don't be bad. That's like going up to someone who's upset and being like, just calm down. Just calm down. No!
hear me out.
Please.
We all want to improve at drawing as soon as possible. But the big question is, how? Well, there's 3 things that you need to keep in mind to actually improve your art. Consistency, smart practice, and lots of reference. Let's start with consistency. Consistency is very simple. You just have to draw 30 minutes or an hour every day for 3 months, and if you do it perfectly, it's going to be part of your everyday life. You won't have any problem with motivation since it's already programmed to your mind that you have to do this every day no matter what. And
I
I'm not
could
talking
see
about
myself doing like 30 to 60 minutes a day for like 5 days a week. I don't know about like every day. It's really hard to be consistent with something when you do it and it's you know that what you're doing is awful. But you have to tell yourself, oh, well, I have to keep being awful to eventually not be awful. I'll be only slightly less awful. Stop. Stop it. I am so irritated. And not just because of that last video. Work has been really irritating me lately, and the people have to deal with that work. I did not mean to zoom in. No. How did I fix this last time? God damn it. How did I fix this? I was able to right-click last time to fix the zoom. Why can't I do that now? Oh my god, please. Why? No! I don't know how to fix this. Oh, here we go. Okay, I found out where it was. But yeah, like, it's really hard to keep doing something when you know you're not good at it. And it's like, well, you just have to keep doing it over and over and over again, and you'll slightly, every day you'll get a little bit better.
Illustrations every day. It's mostly casual sketches, nothing fancy. During those sessions, you're also going to study, and not just draw randomly.
Also, my hand
Art can
hurts.
be really broad and complicated, but if you want to get good at everything, studying fundamentals is the best way to start. Fundamentals will really help you in the long term. Trust me. There are tons of videos out there that fleshes out fundamentals. It's going to be really boring, but once you learn it, you can practically draw with your mind. During these studies, Pinterest is going to be your best friend, because this is where you can get literally every reference you need. So
Everyone
basically,
always
to
talks
get good
about
at art,
Pinterest.
you would need consistent routine where you study fundamentals and copy stuff. And that's basically it, if I had to summarize. But if it's that simple, why isn't everyone good already? That's because there's so much information online and there are infinite ways to improve. So teaching yourself can be a challenge. And also, most people give up on the first week. This is where you separate yourself from the rest. It's also important to learn primarily from actual professionals. So here are some channels that would help you get started. These are some
okay.
really solid teachers that really help
Oh,
you get
Mark
fairly
Brunet, we already
decent.
saw him.
They teach some really helpful stuff that will greatly shape your art. But don't get caught up in thinking that you're being productive just because you watch an art video, because 99% of the time, you have to do all the work. It's like riding a bike. Studying is helpful and all, but you will only learn it if you actually ride the bike. When I started drawing, I really struggled with motivation, because I would just watch all the art guides, but wouldn't even draw once. But one day, I just decided to stop being bad at drawing, and actually focus on improving. And what I did was challenge myself.
I decided to stop being bad, and I was just suddenly good. I know that's not what he's trying to say, but that's what that sounds like. I decided I just won't be bad anymore. I think what he's trying to say is I decided to take it more seriously and actually focus on learning and improving instead of just like stagnating.
Study and practice consistently for 90 days. I immediately got started because I know if I don't start at that very moment, I might as well quit, because if I couldn't get myself to do it in one day, then how could I expect myself to do it in 90 days straight? I didn't have anything back then. All I had was a pen, paper, and my phone, where I look at references. Again, references are important. I just draw day after day while applying all the things I learned from YouTube. And then after a month, it happened. I still suck at drawing. This is where most people give up. But for me,
That's
I
not
thought
that.
I was
Like,
doing
if
it
I
for
could
a
do that,
month,
I'd
so
be
why not
happy,
do it for
honestly.
another month, and then another month, until a year later, that 90 days is still going. Since drawing every day became a habit, in that year alone, I really improved a lot compared to the previous years that I started. And all I did was copy references and stayed consistent. But even with all those practice, I still barely scratched the surface of art. There are tons of things that I need to learn, so I'm willing to go for 100
Wow, these
years
eyes are
since
awful.
90 days isn't going to cut it. And I think that's what you should expect in art. There's no finish line. There's only the endless pursuit of improvement. At least for me. Okay, what do you think is the most important attribute to have as an artist? Is it talent? Creativity? If you said dedication, then you're halfway there. While raw talent and creativity plays a huge role in producing masterpieces, your art career is going to be short-lived if you lack the dedication to constantly improve and learn. Which leads us to the next lesson. Talent is not necessary to be a good artist. Most of the time, people think that talent always does the work, but that's not always the case. Always know that you don't need to be gifted or highly creative to be good at drawing. If you think you're bad at drawing, acknowledge the fact and move on to be better. There's no point in thinking that you're not good enough. Do some studies, find out all the things on how to improve, work smart, and always learn from professionals. I actually started drawing not because I was naturally talented, but simply because I enjoyed it. The pleasure from drawing was enough to captivate me, leading me to dedicate a significant amount of time to learning and practicing art. Let's take a look at some of the greats, like Isaac Newton, Leonardo da Vinci, and Albert Einstein. I realized that their greatness wasn't solely attributed to their talent, but rather to their unwavering obsession with pursuing activities that they were passionate about. Yes, they were smart
So
and
awful.
talented and privileged and all that stuff, but the point is, I do believe that their greatness stemmed from their determination to focus on the things that they love. It was their unwavering dedication, fueled by passion, that made them transcend their limitations and make historical contributions to their respective field. Also, a mindset you should avoid is making up excuses and comparing yourself to others. Oh, that guy is naturally talented, and I could never draw like that. If you keep making excuses like that, you don't really want it. So how do I know this? Because I also made excuses like this, until I realized that I won't go anywhere if I carry this thought all the time. You just have to want it more than anyone else, and that's how you excel at something. And there's actually nothing to worry about if you always think positively.
Want it more? I don't like you wanting it more than somebody else. I don't think it really matters. It's just wanting it enough to want to improve. Right? Because, like, the likelihood that you want to be, like, you want to be better at art more than literally everyone, I don't think that's going to happen. Also, it's not really something you can easily measure.
Keep in
but
mind,
I get what he's trying
the
to
one
say.
that's steering the wheel is you, and you can only decide for yourself if you want to be better or not. Next lesson is fundamentals over style. This is probably my biggest mistake of all time. That's why I always mention this in my videos. Fundamentals is everything. You can't spell art without fundamentals. Well, you can, but anyway. One of the things that I learned in art was the significance of starting with the basics.
I don't even know how to do
I
this.
realized that in order to truly learn and become skilled in art, it is essential to focus on the fundamentals. The fundamentals are like the building blocks of art. They help us understand and simplify complexities of the world around us. They include things like space, shapes, and lighting, which are important for creating art that looks realistic and makes sense. Space is
shapes
about
are
how
really
things look far away
fancy.
and close up in a picture. Understanding this helps us make our art look three-dimensional and interesting. Shapes are the basic forms we use to draw things. They help us show what objects and characters look like. We can also use this to simplify the reference that we see, and once you purposely think of shapes around you, you would realize that everything can be constructed just by using shapes. By paying attention to these fundamentals and practicing them, I found that they gave me a strong foundation to improve my art skills. They also helped me understand other artists and notice how they make their own art. Remembering the fundamentals while drawing is an important part of being creative. They give us guidelines
That
to
doesn't
follow
look
and
right.
adapt as we create our artwork. By focusing on the basics, we can continue to grow and explore our artistic abilities. When it comes to art, there are three outlooks that you should always remember: patience, discipline, and consistency. These qualities are incredibly important for your artistic journey. You see, art is simple and easy, but you have to do it every day. And that's the
Simple?
hard part about it. You need to solve one problem at a time.
High quality.
You can't know it all overnight. Well, you can, but you would need years to practice the skills until it's burned into your mind. First, let's talk about patience. Creating art takes time, and you need to be patient with yourself in the process. You won't become a master overnight, but that's okay. Skills, techniques, and your creative vision develop gradually with practice and experience. So, be patient and embrace the learning curve. Remember, progress comes with time and dedication. Next up is discipline. It's not enough to rely solely on inspiration or wait for the perfect moment to draw. You need to be disciplined and commit to regular practice. Set aside dedicated time for your art, even when you're not feeling motivated. Having discipline means developing a strong work ethic and creating consistent creative routine. It's about showing up and putting in the effort,
I cannot
even when it's
draw on
tough.
this tablet for anything.
Let's not forget about consistency. Consistency is closely tied to discipline. It means showing up and engaging in your creative work regularly, no matter what. By practicing consistently, you'll develop your skills and deepen your understanding of your chosen path, and build creative momentum. It's through consistent effort that you'll overcome obstacles and break through creative blocks. So, stay committed and make art a regular part of your life. Art is not about instant mastery. It's a journey of gradual progress and continuous learning.
Man,
Take it
nothing.
one step at a time.
You're never gonna master
focusing
anything
on solving
instantly.
specific challenges along the way. Each problem you solve and every practice session you complete contributes to your growth as an artist. It may take years of practice to truly feel confident, but that's all part of the process. Lastly, when in doubt, just draw what you see. This is the key to drawing. This is the very essence that I've missed my entire life. It's so simple yet very effective. This changed my way of drawing so much that the second I decided to draw what I see made me realize that everything I needed has always been there if I just actually looked. Now, of course, it also takes time to train your eyes and learn the theory, so don't worry if you don't get it. You're gonna realize this sooner or later. Drawing from imagination alone is literally impossible. That's why you have to observe first. Everything that everyone draws came from somewhere, and that is real life. Drawing from observation is the best way to learn. Can't draw
Watch a
hands?
video on how to
Just
draw
look at your
faces.
hands.
I do have some of
Everything
those
that
in
you
the
can ever think
playlist.
of can either be found on the internet or outside your doorstep. I think drawing is just a series of copying and collecting data. The more you draw and copy stuff, the more you can store a collection of images that you can visualize and draw easily later on. Everything that I've been drawing here are taken from a reference, and I've been using this technique to teach myself everything about art for the past year. But of course, it's not just about copying. You also have to think. This is where fundamentals comes in. Drawing from observation helps you develop skills like attention to detail, hand-eye coordination, and depicting realistic subjects. It teaches you about light, shadows, textures, and spatial relationships by closely observing the world. After collecting enough data, you can now test your memory by drawing from imagination. This also allows for creativity, personal expression, and exploring new ideas. It lets you communicate concepts and stories and emotions that don't exist in reality. Both observational drawing and drawing from imagination enhance your artistic abilities. Observational drawing builds technical skills, while drawing from imagination lets you bring your unique perspective to life. Copying and collecting data are part of learning. Studying existing art and objects helps you understand techniques, styles, and subjects. This knowledge becomes a resource for creating original artwork. Balance between observation and imagination is key. Both have value, and combining them makes for a well-rounded artistic practice. As you draw and gather experience, your ability to visualize and create from your imagination will grow. And that's it. Hopefully this helps, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace!
What if I told you there is a way for you to be able to draw anything?
I think I will save that for next time. Yeah, I'm definitely not used to doing this because my hand already kind of hurts. It doesn't help that this drawing tablet is really small. God damn it. I don't know what I'm doing. This nose looks awful. Yeah, when I say like, I'm not talking about like spreading my fingers. If I just put my hand over my drawing tablet, I pretty much cover the entire thing, like the drawing space. So imagine you are trying to like draw on your hand, and that's the size of the paper you're trying to work with. When I bought this, I didn't realize how small it was. It is small, and it is not easy to draw on this. I feel like I have an easier time drawing on actual paper, full-size paper. You also have to think, is that what they said? Oh, I don't know. Maybe. Is that something they said at the end?
Drawing from imagination lets you bring your unique perspective to life. Copying and collecting data are part of learning. Studying existing art and objects helps you understand techniques, styles, and subjects. This knowledge becomes a resource for creating original artwork. Balance between observation and imagination is key. Both have value, and combining them makes for a well-rounded artistic practice. As you draw and gather experience, your ability to visualize and create from your imagination will grow. And that's it. Hopefully this helps, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace!
What if I told you there is a way
I don't know. Yeah, it is. I don't know. It like my hand hurts, like at the bottom of my thumb, like where the thumb connects into the palm. You know. Ugh. Well, here's all my crummy drawings, my crummy sketches from today. But yeah, it is. It's. I can only comfortably draw. Hold on, I can't see what I'm doing. Are any of these... Okay, this one's blank. So, like, when I have my tablet, my hand is resting here. And so I can draw comfortably, like, up here in this quadrant. Maybe, like, a little bit more down. Like that. But, like, drawing down here, my hand has to be off of it. And it doesn't work for a while. I have to like hold my hand up in the air. I can't like rest it. And then up here it's mostly hanging off as well. And down here definitely not good. Oh. I don't know. I don't know if my original plan was like to do live streams where I can gradually get better at drawing, but I don't know if I can do that with this. But then it's like, I don't know if I want to invest like hundreds of dollars into like an actual nice drawing tablet, one that has a screen that's decently sized. I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna do. Maybe I should just work on my book like I should be. But I think that's gonna be pretty much it for today. So if you're on YouTube, if you want to see me try and learn to draw more, make sure to leave a comment and let me know. If this video doesn't do well, then I just take it as like no one's interested, and I won't bother putting these on YouTube. But yeah, goodbye YouTube, and I will see you next time, maybe. If not, there's always my main channel. I got shorts going up on there, and then on this channel, the VOD channel, we will have probably gaming VODs coming up eventually. But thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.